All right, guys. So today I want to talk about, does the sauna enhance strength and performance? I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach, Erik Rokisky, for everyone who doesn't know me by now. And the reason I wanted to talk about this was because the sauna over the years has gained tons of popularity. I call it the Joe Rogan effect. Ever since 2014, when Rhonda Patrick did her first blog post, or guest blog post for Tim Ferriss, it's kind of like taken the world by storm, and that was about 6 years ago. And now I feel like the sauna has kind of gotten a little overhyped when it comes to certain things. If you just go on Google, you can even see things like sauna increases muscle mass, increases longevity, gets rid of pain, gets rid of depression, and there is some evidence behind these things. But the one thing I was more interested in was going to be, how does it actually affect strength and performance? So 6 years ago, I drank the Kool-Aid pretty hard. I was 21 years old. At the time, I was personal training. My gym had a sauna, so I was using it all the time. I mean, after I read that study where they said HGH increased by 1,600%, I had no idea what HGH really did. I just heard that it was good for you. So I was like, 1,600% increase, that has to be good. So I would start out warming up in the sauna, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, because I thought, well, if you get some HGH in the beginning, get some HGH at the end, it's only gonna be good, right? So I kept doing it about 3 to 5 times a week, and sometimes I would even work out in the sauna. I was like, you know what, let's do some push-ups, bodyweight squats. And what I found was, I had really good results. I felt good, my body felt good, not that many injuries. I was moving some weight. I don't have any video evidence of me moving a lot of weight, but my numbers are pretty good. But then I started to realize, looking back 6 years later, I just quit my job at Equinox. The whole time at Equinox, they only had a steam room. And when it comes to the research, steam and sauna, there's really not that much research showing steam is as good as sauna. So I didn't use it as much. But now that I quit Equinox, I'm joining a new gym and they have a sauna there. And that sauna gets pretty hot, actually up to 170 degrees. So I was like, maybe let's actually take a look at the research instead of just blindly following the experts. So I figured with this opportunity of doing a research project, I can actually go deep into it. Because at the beginning of this project, it was a huge struggle for me to actually focus on what I wanted to do. And thanks to Ben for actually helping me clarify what I want to do with this project. At first it started out, does sauna increase muscle growth? It turns out there's no studies on that, just heat pads. And I was like, I'm probably never going to use heat pads at all. So I wanted to see what was actually the effect when using the sauna. And also, should I actually start doing this again and dedicate all that time? Because if you think about it, if you're in the sauna for 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, 3 to 5 times a week, that adds up quickly, almost at anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a month. So it's asking the question, do you want to use that time, or do you want to dedicate that elsewhere? And also, 6 years ago, I was 21 years old. So I started thinking also, well, maybe just because I was 21 years old, I was getting all those benefits, maybe it wasn't the sauna. So most of the studies are done in Finland. That's why this has gotten so popular. There's over 2 million saunas in Finland for just a population of 5 million. That equals 1 sauna for every 3 people. Out of those 2 million saunas, I did not know this until a week ago, there's actually a sauna in a Burger King. So the Finns love the sauna so much to put in the Burger King, and there's actually a 37,000 person wait list to use that Burger King. So the question is why are the Finns willing to do this, to eat a Whopper while exposed to heat? If we look at a systematic review, thanks to Eric for telling me the difference between that and meta-analysis, it seems like the sauna has tons of benefits for cardiovascular disease. They do make the case that it might help with chronic pain, it could help with depression, and a host of other things, but it seems like cardiovascular-wise and reduced mortality are up there when it comes to fighting that disease. But the question is, what about strength and performance? Because through that systematic review, a lot of this, there's only about 13 randomized controlled trials, and 2 of the big ones where everyone gets all their information from, the reduced mortality, depression, are all observational studies, about 20 years long. So there's so many different variables affecting it. It's hard to just ask yourself, is it the sauna, or is it because maybe they have access to a sauna, so maybe they have more money, maybe they're eating healthier foods, and also maybe they just have more friendships too, so they're not as isolated. So when it comes to strength and performance, we're gonna look at strength first. There aren't that many studies on this topic. This is a pre-sauna study. by Headley et al. 2002. They took 10 men, had them in the sauna for 30 minutes, about 65 to 75 Celsius, which comes out to 150 to 170 degrees. And what they found was doing the pre-sauna for 30 minutes and then testing vertical jump and then the 1 rep max in leg press, 1 rep max in bench press, and muscular endurance in both. I was at 75% in the 1 rep max for max reps. They found that there was a 3% increase in vertical jump, so very small increase in vertical jump, but they had a huge decrease in repetitions. So about 29% decrease in repetitions with leg press, 15% decrease in bench press, and even a 1 rep max decrease in leg press. The reason with the decrease in repetitions, they say, is because when core temperature elevates a ton, muscle endurance just goes down. I think it was very hard for me to understand why that would happen, but just the idea of that core temperature increasing too much, muscular endurance was not able to continually go up. And the reason for the 22-pound decrease in 1 rep max was simply because the subjects felt really fatigued, and they were unmotivated to actually work out after the sauna. So bench press is not as fatiguing to the system as leg press, so that's why bench press didn't change as much. So the message here is probably, if you're going to use the sauna for a warm-up, 3 to 5 minutes max, and I would highly not use it any longer than that, or you're going to see some decreases in performance. So post-sauna wise, this study just came out. Rasanen et al. 2020 took 27 men. This study was a month long, and they were measuring the sauna's effect on neuromuscular performance, so counter movement jump, isometric leg press, isometric bench press. During those movements, the subjects were encouraged to push as hard as they could for 3 to 5 seconds. So I really like this study because it's purely looking at strength. You're really taking fatigue out of the question. So let's see what ends up happening. So these are the protocols that each person did. So basically the 27 people did the sauna protocol, and then they waited a week, and then they went ahead, did the endurance, waited a week, strength, waited a week, and then combined strength and endurance together. With the combined one, they did make sure the volume was equal. So they just cut both things in half when they were doing it. And here are the results. So as expected with all the things, exercise loadings decreased performance, obviously. So this was looking at the next day performance. So basically, they went through their protocol, and then they did their testing, and then they did their testing again 24 hours later to see how it affected it. And what they found was the strength plus sauna was the most fatiguing protocol overall. So that had the biggest decrease in performance, especially in the leg press. So kind of the similar theme to what we saw before was that the leg press had a much greater loss versus the bench press. And most likely it is due to that the leg press, lower body muscles might take a little bit more load than the upper body. I found the most interesting thing here was that the sauna only group, which had no exercise loading whatsoever, still had a decrease in neuromuscular force the next day in the leg press, which to me, I could not really understand how that would happen because even in this study, these people were from Finland. So they were training twice a week and using the sauna once a week too. So most likely they were using the sauna for almost their whole life if they're from Finland. So at first I was thinking, what the authors thought is maybe the sauna bathing was just too much of a stressor and that reduced performance. But these people seem to have been heat acclimated, and so still don't know why there was such a detriment to that performance. And I think that's still up for discussion with all the authors moving forward. Again, this is very limited in their findings when it comes to just research in general. So the authors stated too is that we probably need to replicate this study again, but use lower heat, maybe use longer durations or even shorter durations when it comes to the sauna frequency in general. So another study looking at the endurance aspect of performance, Rokisky et al. Took 20 swimmers and triathletes, and they were measuring intensive training plus sauna, and then just intensive training followed by a placebo. And the way this worked is the swimmers would come in, and they would start out, do their counter movement jump. They would do their time trial, pre-time trial, 4 sets by 50 meters, and then they would do their intensive training. And the intensive training was intense. So it was 10 sets by 100-meter swim, and the author said they were at 107% anaerobic threshold. So these people were working very hard. After they got done with that intensive training regimen, one group went into the sauna, another group did the placebo protocol, which was just relaxed using a pH-balanced massage oil, sitting upright in a chair. After that, the next morning, they did the counter movement jump, and the time trial all over again. And the next one was at 7 a.m., so they did not get a full 24-hour recovery. It was pretty close together in time. And what they found was 15 out of the 20 swimmers who did the sauna protocol had slower times. It was about 1.69% slower, and the placebo group had a faster time of 0.66%. During the study, both groups went through the same protocols. The sauna group went first, and then there was a 5-day washout, and then they switched again just to give them enough time to recover before doing it. Again, so the author stated, is this due to excessive stress? When it comes to the sauna, it is increasing your core temperature. It is driving the sympathetic response. You are going to get a higher heart rate. So the authors thought maybe due to the intense training program, plus the sauna, maybe they were exposed to too much of a stressor. And when we're looking at the stress response, it's a thing where, less can be more, and if you get over the edge, that's where you're going to run into issues. So it's the idea of that when you're training, you're playing a fine line, and there's always that risk to benefit ratio. And a lot of times, like when I was younger, I didn't even know this existed. I just thought more was better, right? So it's like when I was training, when I was 21 years old, using the sauna, I just thought, well, if I lift weights, if I use the sauna, my body will only get stronger. And maybe you can get away with that if you're sleeping a lot, if you have really good nutrition. But in today's world, there's so many outside stressors affecting you on top of it that it might not be the best idea to add more stressors into the mix. So when it comes to the stress response curve, especially for strength, it seems like something is happening with the sauna where your performance is suffering. It's like you're doing really good with that initial training stressor, but then the sauna is pushing you over the edge where your performance is actually starting to reduce. But it's like, how can we potentially manage this stress? And what I believe too is that endurance-wise, I think could be way better when it comes to reducing that stress response instead of strength. So I think the issue with the Skorsky study was that these swimmers were inexperienced, they were young, and I think that affected them. This was maybe like their first or second time using the sauna. So I think the swimmers had a huge excessive stress response, whereas if you do become heat acclimated, I think you can learn to manage the stress and increase that level so you don't tip over and start to lose performance benefits. But again, back to the study before that of the Rasan, it's like these people were heat acclimated, but they didn't really measure endurance testing. It was counter movement jump, bench press, and leg press. Even with the endurance-based protocol, it's not like they were testing that again. So I'd be really interested to see if they did test endurance in this study, what would happen. So from an endurance standpoint, heat acclimation has shown to have some really good cardiovascular benefits. Most of it is due to plasma volume expansion, which is going to drive up heart rate acutely and then chronically lower resting heart rate. So what that might help is it might help drive a little bit more work capacity or the ability to handle more work when doing endurance-based events. And when it comes to heat acclimation, the studies have shown that when it comes to the sauna too, it's like once you use the sauna once, and back to that stress response, once you use the sauna once, the repeated bout effect is going to happen where it's not going to exert the same amount of stress. So they took 18-year-old wrestlers, 18 to 25-year-old wrestlers, and exposed them to the sauna one time a week for 5 months, equaling 20 sessions. And what they found was the first session, they had a huge reaction to it. Core temperature was much higher, and even their the reactive oxygen species level was much higher too the first time. And then by the 20th session, everything was reduced down, even their core temperature. So there does seem to be diminishing returns also where your core temperature isn't going to get as hot. And that's where maybe you have to start playing with the duration and the intensity of it, just like exercise. So with the heat acclimation, it's been shown to take about 5 days on average. And then after those 5 days, for every 2 days you don't do it, you lose 1 day of benefit, they say. So what this looks like is if you were heat adapted up to B, it starts to curve off around 2 weeks max. That's when the benefits kind of start to go away. If you waited a certain amount of days, say about 12 days, and then reacclimated, there seems to be some heat memory effect where you reacclimate way faster. So this makes me think that if you're going to do heat acclimation, it could be really smart to do it in the beginning, potentially go away from it, and then reintroduce it again and cycle it in and out just like you do with any strength and conditioning program. And if we're looking at the endurance side of performance, Stanley et al. Took only 7 bikers. So one thing is with all these studies, they're very, very underpowered when it comes to participants. So only 7 studies here. They had days 1 through 17, they did their own training for biking. On average, it was about 50 minutes of moderate intensity on a bike. And then the next 10 days, they used the sauna. The only issue with this study, though, is that during those 10 sauna days, they were no longer supervised with their training. They were just asked to go do it and report it themselves. But it is interesting to see that with the sauna, they did have a 17% increase in plasma volume in just 4 sessions. And then after that, the plasma volume started to dip down and go back to kind of pre-levels of the sauna. Not completely, but close to it. And also, due to the 17% increase in plasma volume and the sauna, they saw an 11% decrease in resting heart rate, which I think could be the best part about all of this, is the acute increase of heart rate and then the resting heart rate decrease afterwards. Another study done looking at endurance effects. This is the big one from Rhonda Patrick that she talks about mostly. Again, really underpowered though, only 6 people. And within those 6 people, they did 3 weeks of training, 12 sauna sessions total at 90 Celsius, which I think is about 180 to like 190 degrees for 30 minutes. So this is on the high end. Most finished sauna bathing is usually 5 to 20 minutes with breaks in between. But what they did find though is they did find a 30% increased runtime to exhaustion. So pre-training, they ran 15 minutes, how far can you run? Post-training, 15 minutes, how far can you run? And it came out to about a 2% increase in performance, which can be very useful when it comes to elite runners. But they did say that elite runners might not see the same benefits as sub-elite. So there might be a training effect where beginners might get more out of this versus advanced people. And when it comes to this study, the most important thing to look at, though, is so in the study before, the Stanley et al., they actually had a performance decrease. So during that 10 days of training, from day 18 to 28, their duration and load all went down. But in this study, there was no change. They still averaged the same amount of workload, which came out to be about 53 minutes of running. So that was one thing I was kind of confused how the cycling study, they saw decrease in performance and duration, but here they didn't see anything. And it made me think, well, maybe because in the Stanley study, they were told just go do it by yourself, unsupervised. They didn't have that motivation factor, where here they were supervised throughout the whole 3 weeks. So the question is why are we getting such huge increases in blood volume and plasma volume? And in the systematic review before, they talk about sauna fitness. The idea that the sauna is giving you some aerobic effect just like exercise. And this study just came out 2019. I think it's Kettle Hut. I could be wrong. And what they looked at was the effects of the sauna versus moderate cycling. So the moderate cycling started at 50 watts and went all the way to 100 watts for 5 minutes. And the sauna, they were in there for 20 minutes. And what they saw was the heart rates ended up being the same. So you had about 115 to 125 heart rate, and about the same thing, 115 to 125 heart rate. So the thing is, it's like you can either do 5 minutes of cycling or 20 minutes of sauna, and you might get to the same place when it comes to heart adaptation. And in this study, though, this study right here, the subject's heart rate got all the way up to 141 beats, though. So one thing in the strength and conditioning world that a lot of people talk about when it comes to coaches is building an aerobic base. So I think why they did see a useful increase in performance here was because they did 30 minutes of training and then an additional 30 minutes of more cardiovascular training. So I think being in that heart rate range for close to an hour could have potentially increased heart size and helped lower resting heart rate and increased cardiovascular functions. Not sure if that's true. I know a lot of the research on the left ventricle hypertrophy stuff is it's not I would say it's not backed by too many people. I just know a lot of strength and conditioning coaches in the field are always doing some type of aerobic base in the first 1 to 3 months. Another study too looked at sauna for 30 minutes at 163 degrees, and they found a little bit higher heart rate increase, 131 beats, and a steady increase throughout. In both of these studies, they did see blood pressure increase throughout it and then had a decrease afterwards. And I like the quote by the author Iguchi, I think that's Iguchi, at 2012, looked at saying timely heat stress might serve as an adjunct to training for people who cannot exercise. So I think the sauna, the most benefits from the fitness aspect are going to be for people joint friendly, less wear and tear, people who are injured or immobilized. Also, people who just like hate cardio, Eric, maybe you fall into that group, using the sauna could potentially help people still increase their work capacity, maybe even increase recovery. Just to throw it out there, heat shock protein, you do get a heat shock protein release. This study is about a 50% increase above levels. When it comes to heat shock proteins, they help repair damaged proteins. So maybe that helps out with recovery. Maybe the HGH increase helps out recovery. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's going to hurt if you're able to do just this by itself. You run the risk of combining too much exercise and too much sauna. So, but strength-wise, right, when it looks at strength, neuromuscular-wise, it seems like the sauna is going to decrease strength acutely. That's what I think, especially with the idea that these people were heat acclimated and that they still saw a decrease in leg strength. It makes me think that acutely you're going to lose some strength, but long-term, like you were talking about yesterday, Eric, it's like maybe we increase the work capacity, maybe that leads to increased frequency, better recovery, and by getting greater muscle hypertrophy, now we have a bigger muscle, maybe now we have a stronger muscle. But again, it's just an idea. I think it could work, but I still think the key points are going to be the acute strength decrease. I don't think it's the best idea to be using the sauna 24 hours before some type of competition or even before some type of intense training session. If your goal is just to get to the gym and just be okay with like suboptimal performance, you're not really too worried about it, then you can use the sauna as much as you want. But that's not me, and that's not my population. When it comes to endurance, it does seem to have a performance increase. Maybe it's due to plasma volume. Maybe it's due to the lower resting heart rate. I think it could be a host of things. Maybe it's just improved mood. I don't really know, but I think based on the 2 studies we saw, it does seem to help out with performance from an endurance perspective though. But I do think that to see that endurance performance, I think heat acclimation should probably come first though. I think the key to all of this is getting acclimated before you actually jump in the sauna. And then from the sauna fitness standpoint, using it for injuries, using it for cardio, for people who don't enjoy it, could be very beneficial for someone who doesn't actually want to go to the gym and just walk on a treadmill. If you can tell them, hey, you have 2 options. You can ride this bike for 5 or 10 minutes, or you can just sit in the sauna for 20 minutes. It seems like heart rate is the same. Which one do you want? And giving the person choice, the novelty factor, can really help out in the long run. So if we're looking at programming ideas, like I said before, if you're going to be using this for injuries, if you're immobilized, or even just cardio, I do think at least 30 minutes is probably going to give you the most bang for your buck. I don't think it's smart just to use this for 15 minutes and be like, oh, I got my cardio in for the day. I think you do have to be in there for a while, and I do think you can actually use it just like exercise where you can do sets and reps. I think you could probably go in there for 10 minutes, maybe take a 1 to 5 minute break, 10 minutes again, 1 to 5 minute break, and cycle in and out like that, whereas you don't just have to suffer for a full 30 minutes. And then if you do still want to use this for a training standpoint, which I'm going to do, I think keeping it short from 5 to 15 minutes, maybe only use it 1 to 2 times per week, could give you some benefits. But just remember that if performance is 24 hours the next day, wait until a recovery day, an off day, or even a deload week. So if you do need to kind of get some volume in, but your joints are killing you, and you just need to take a break from your program, using this for a deload week could have tons of benefits. And that is everything.